All right, welcome to another episode of the Credder Podcast. I'm your host, Chase Palmieri, and with me today is Jeff Bonforte. Jeff, I'm just going to do a little highlight reel of your career for listeners, and I'm sure to leave out some of your accomplishments, but Jeff is a serial entrepreneur and investor. He's founded multiple companies, one of which was acquired by Google, another one called Zobni, which was acquired by Yahoo, where he later served as their senior vice president of communications. And most recently, Jeff and his partners acquired the gay dating app Grindr. And this is a very popular dating app for gay men. And he is now acting as their CEO. And full disclosure for listeners as well, Jeff is one of Credder's advisor. And that's been an honor since Jeff is one of the best product people out there. So Jeff, thanks for coming on today.
Sure, good to be here.
Yeah. So have I missed it, or has there been almost no press, or have you done any public interviews of any kind since the acquisition?
I've only done one. We did, when we closed the deal, we did an interview with the advocate. I think that was the only one we've done. In general, PR just doesn't have the same role, I think, as it did early on in sort of my tech career when a story in the New York Times or a story with the right tech journal would really change your user base and get you new users. And people just have shorter attention span. Social media is more important nowadays. So we do less press. We do try to talk to our users directly more often, though.
And so were you upfront with all of your users about the change in ownership?
Yeah, I mean, we were pretty public about it. I think one of the reasons is Grindr, I think, was the first company that the U.S. government forced a sale. There's something called the CFIUS. CFIUS is the Committee for International. It's a U.S. government agency, and their job is to review business deals that are international and make a judgment. And typically, that's done on the front end of the deal. So if a Chinese company is buying a U.S. company, CFIUS will review the deal and make sure that it doesn't violate national security or some other issue. And so the US government can say no to those deals. We're seeing it with TikTok right now, but in fact, Grindr, I think, was the first one where CFIUS retroactively took a deal that was previously approved and then made the Chinese actually sell it back to an investor group of Americans. So the Chinese owners had to sell the company, so we bought it. And so we did. There was some coverage, mostly from that perspective, the CFIUS process.
Okay, and how did you and your partners, because I believe you made the acquisition not alone, but with some partners out of your fund, how did that deal come together? How did you hear word of it, and how did it all kind of come together and when?
I believe that the U.S. government gave the Chinese owners, which it's a public company in China called Kunlun, and they do like online gaming and things like that. They were notified that they had a year to sell the company. The moment the CFIUS process starts, actually, the CFIUS, CFIUS includes American security agencies, Congress members. It's like a Justice Department, et cetera. It's a organization of a number of different branches of the U.S. government that look at these deals. They actually get involved in the business. They join your board, they watch you. So the Chinese actually, during the CFIUS process, there were a set of things that Grindr had to do. And then that ended with a hard sell date of June, the end of June 2020. So we actually, we pursued the deal. We heard about it from one of my partners has been working on deals with tech companies in China. And so we heard it through that process. Grindr's an amazing brand, a great business, really enthusiastic users. So we were interested. We pursued the deal for over a year. There were a few people looked at it, but in the end, 3 parties really were interested in the deal. And in fact, we lost the deal. So our firm lost the deal. But through our advisor group at Catapult, we met the team that did win the deal, and we ended up partnering with them. And our specialty at Catapult is we're operators, as you said. Like my entire career has been mostly on tech product and managing, we're running startups. So our specialty is operations. And so the specialty of the firm that was acquiring it, they had some operational background, but that wasn't their thing. Like they actually were really good with these US Asia deals and great finance firm. So we partnered up together. We actually, for all these deals, you end up creating a new company anyway. So we joined that new company that did the acquisition.
Okay, and what was it about Grindr that made it especially interesting for an acquisition?
Well, Grindr's profitable. That's good for acquisitions. Like when you're trying to do an acquisition, if you're acquiring a brand that's already profitable, that's an important component. It makes the process of getting the capital together necessary to do the deal a little bit easier. Because, in the venture business, we're generally betting on valuations in advance of the company achieving that value. With Grindr, we were doing it after the company's profitable. It's more simple to come up with a valuation. The CFIUS process is completely non-trivial. It's really a lot of work. It's intensive. It's expensive. Um, so that actually scares away a fair number of investors. So that's actually good. So if you're looking to buy a company, there's not 10 buyers. Like with TikTok, I don't know how many they ended up with before Oracle was selected, but it's an intricate enough process that it will scare away a lot of the traditional buyers that might be out there buying these, or normal private equity firms. And then you have to kind of understand some of the issues associated with a Chinese business, and you have to be able to navigate those pieces as well. So first of all, we had that experience in our team, as well as the group we partnered with. There was that experience, so we had that. We weren't scared of the CFIUS process. We knew it would be intense, but we were happy to go through the process because Grindr itself is an amazing business. There are very few tech brands that are more than a decade old and still the dominant players in their space, where the customers are still happy. There's a lot of energy. If you look at the engagement of a Grindr user and compare it to, say, Tinder, Grindr users are 5 to 10 times more engaged in the product. So it's got a happy and loyal user base. It's a fresh, relevant brand that dominates its category and has been dominating it for a decade. It has a storied history with a great founding story and a good founder who we got to know through the process. And so everything about the brand is great. And it's very rare actually to be able to acquire a company where it's the number one company in its space. That alone is sort of amazing. So we liked it across the board. There was nothing we really didn't like, except for that we knew the process of taking over from Chinese ownership and that transition would itself be a little bit messy. And Grindr had been through 3 phases. There was the phase of the business that was run by the founder, Joel, who had taken it to a set, and then the Chinese about 3 years ago bought it. The Chinese company bought it about 3 years ago, and there's that phase, and then sort of in June have started this 3rd phase. And again, when you're spending hundreds of millions of dollars on a deal, you're very worried about risk. And so those transitions themselves are risky. So I think it was important to find a team that had operational competency. So my partners and I are good on that side to sort of make sure that the business can survive the transition.
Right, and obviously to help manage that risk, you became the CEO, which I have to admit kind of surprised me. Was that always the intention when you were, for this year-long period, hunting down this deal?
Well, as part of the process, you're always looking for the right group of investors, the right group of leadership. You're looking for the talent overall throughout the entire company. You're trying to understand I talked to hundreds and hundreds of customers over the year. I spent time with the company, a lot of diligence. We spent time talking to other people in the industry, people working for Match Group and Tinder, and we got to know. Our announcement, I think, included the fact that the founder of OkCupid and former CEO of Match Group, who took it public, Sam Yagan, is one of the partners we brought into the deal. So we got to know the online dating space. We got to know the LGBTQ tech space. We had to get to know that piece. And then we had to know the unique challenges specific to Grindr. And once we got to the unique challenges for Grindr, a lot of it was something that I thought was probably pretty relevant to the work I had done at Yahoo, where I'd operated at scale. I had operated with high complexity. I had operated where we had privacy, global privacy, regulatory, safety and security, and all those other things. So some of the challenges for Grindr in the short term were to transition the business, help it sort of go through what I consider to be a pretty traumatic thing for the business and potentially for the customers. And I had been through a lot of those types of things at Yahoo. And then also deal just with the mechanics of the business to make it safer, to make the user's data more secure, to make the privacy policies, right, to make sure that we were more compliant with GDPR and now the California regulations and the upcoming regulations in Brazil and the upcoming regulations in Russia and all those things. And when I ran a group of over 3,000 employees at Yahoo and billions of dollars of revenue and a product that reached 400 or 500 million. So I dealt with all that complexity before. And at its base, Grindr is a messaging service. It's like a communication service on top of it with a specific online dating and connection social piece to it. And so I had a lot of experience with that. And considering I had these advisors that had started OkCupid and run Match Group, it was like, it was pretty easy to be able to add the dating piece in.
Before this interview, I actually went back and watched one of your talks where you spoke about how you used the GDPR as kind of a cover to work on some of the technical debt that had been building up. Did you find that when you came into the role that there was a lot of that same technical debt?
I would say Grindr's technical debt was a little bit different. Listen, Grindr's, it's a 10-year-old business, but in some ways it's really like 5 years old, right? So it's grown really quickly. It's a big business. We don't talk exactly about revenue, but the revenue is extensive. So in some ways it's quite a big business. And in other ways, it's still a very small business. Today it's a little over 100 employees. It's not a huge business that way. So in terms of organizational, it's not that complex, and the debt is cultural, just from the changing hands of business. So we have cultural pieces we had to firm up a little bit as we did the ownership changes. There is technical debt in the business. All fast-growing businesses have technical debt. I think when I've done startups and then when I've done these large technical groups, like technical businesses like Yahoo or technology companies where I've run on bigger groups, you get a sense for how to put the two pieces together, the startup side and the running at scale, we're going to go public or we're going to be a public company. And that bridge is something that I've learned over time, and I have a unique perspective on it. I think if you brought in someone who had just worked for a big tech company, they don't understand the sort of roots of a startup. And if you've just been in a startup, you haven't been through all the paper cut learning that you get when you're running a public company, and you have just the accounting rules of being public and all those other things. So that bridge, I think I had a unique ability to work on. So the answer is yes, there is technical debt in the business, but every business has technical debt. So it doesn't matter if you're at Google, Facebook, Yahoo. The question is, where's the debt? How heavy is it to pay off? Why do you pay it off? When do you pay it off? So putting those pieces together, I think that's an issue of discipline as well as some sophistication associated with, like, can we do work that allows us to still move faster in the future? And you're not just simply paying off tech debt. But yeah, there's a lot of challenges at Grindr, and most of them are good challenges. We're happy that the business grows quickly. We're happy that features are introduced and that users, flock to the business. And those things tend to bring you debt, right? If you had 100 users a year ago and 100 users 5 years ago, you don't have much debt because the infrastructure is not being stressed. But Grindr's, tens of millions of users and millions of users every day. So that is scale that I've operated many times in my career. I've been doing tech now for 20 plus years. So I felt comfortable with that, and I kind of understood where Grindr would be in the next 5 years. So I can kind of help put those pieces together and recruit the right people who would understand those problems and be able to help. So that's a really long answer, but yes, we have chosen to be aggressive about paying down debt across the company, whether it's cultural debt or tech debt or we're redoing customer care and hiring all new talent for customer care, and the banning and photo moderation. I ran Flickr, so I learned a lot about photo moderation, and we're reworking that process and working on the automation and the machine learning that will help us improve the process. So we're doing a lot of stuff. And the nice thing about Grindr is it takes from a lot of the pieces of experience in my career I didn't necessarily know I'd use again.
Yeah.
So I've built messaging platforms, built and run messaging platforms multiple times. I've built machine learning and data systems, and worked on just the operational pieces and HR transformations, all those things.
Yeah, my first thought when I heard the news was, oh, wow, good for the Grindr community. Their product's probably about to get a lot better. They're lucky to have such a kind of a product-focused, user-focused operator. And then I started thinking more about, well, how is a dating app for gay men and the LGBTQ community more broadly, how is that really any different than the same type of dating app that you would want to serve any other community? Because in many ways, isn't it the same kind of core group of features? Obviously, maybe you prioritize some over other. There's different branding and messaging and marketing. But I mean, I guess, how is it different operating a gay dating app versus just any dating app?
I would say at a very high level, you're right. The core components we put in, whether or not we're using video or we're using chat windows or people are sort of liking or whatever equivalent that is, there are a number of things that are common. So it's kind of like, you know, the ingredients to make pancakes, the ingredients to make waffles, the ingredients to make bread, they're roughly the same. And I would say you're right about that. Technology wise, we're not that different than Bumble. We're not that different than Tinder. We're not that different than OkCupid in terms of the core components. When you get below that, the way Grindr users use the product is very different from the way Tinder users use the product. And that is, as a straight cis man who's married with kids, and I haven't done online dating, right? I sort of found my wife just when online dating was sort of coming into its own. So I didn't have that background. So it's a handicap for me to be able, you know, I'm not as good on the product side as I would be as if I were a gay man and I'd been using Grindr for 5 years. So that part's hard. I went through the same process of learning about the business, of learning about the users and talking to them. And I'm on the product every single day. It says in my profile, hey, I work at the company and I'm a straight guy, but if you have questions or concerns or things you want to do, and I get lots of messages every day. Every week, I probably get 50 messages from users who want to talk to me just about their favorite features or features they hate, or why does the product work this way or that way. So as a product manager, I go through the same process. And if I were working at Tinder, I'd go through the same process. And the process is not so much that I personally understand the product, it's that I build up that empathy for the user and I understand what the users want. And that happens from hearing their stories and talking to users just nonstop. And then building data systems that let me hear from the users in different ways. I can watch and learn from what they're doing on the product. Whenever you're doing digital, the complexity is how to hear as a product manager. How can you hear what the users are saying? And there's traditional ways through customer care, and there's the reviews and all those things, and we do all that. But then we just want to understand what the dashboards are telling us, and not these high level metrics, not DAUs or MAUs. It doesn't tell you much. We're trying to figure out, like, why is this feature utilized? And then once we start to get a sense for it, we start talking to tons and tons of users. And so I actually think part of the discipline we'll bring to Grindr is bringing the generic tools, because early on in Grindr, probably gay men were the dominant employee base. And over time, you know, as you scale up, you're going to have actually a more diverse employee base. And so we just have to build in all those systems to hear and have that fidelity. So that we can make better products, so that we can make our users happier. I do think that under the previous ownership group, revenue and growth was the dominant, you know, focus for the company. And with our ownership group, it's making our users happier, creating that high quality engagement, and then hoping that that will then drive the next set of growth for the business. We want it to be a great business. We want to, you know, achieve financial success for the employees, and it's good for our customers that we have that success. But focusing back on the customer, which I don't know that focus was 100% there for the last few years, and getting back to that absolute focus and doing what's right for the customer and making long-term decisions. As a private company, it's easier to do that. So that was the long answer again, which is I think anyone that watches this, they're going to be like, oh my God. But yeah, it's hard. It's different. It's not different at the very high level, but the minute you dive in any deeper, which is what any product manager is going to do, yeah, it gets incredibly different. And my instincts don't serve me as well as they did after, you know, running Yahoo Mail for 4 years, where my instincts on what my hundreds of millions of users around the world wanted. But I didn't, you know, there's another piece which I sometimes caution product managers and entrepreneurs, which is they sometimes are heavy users of a product or users in a space. They then bring that bias and they project themselves into all future users of the product. And that can often be the same mistake. So in this case, I wasn't an active Grindr user. I wasn't an active online dating app of any kind user. So I didn't bring much bias, one good or bad. So I didn't get the benefits, but I don't also have the negatives, meaning I don't just see the product only from my eyes. It's easier for me to see it from many, many different users' eyes.
Yeah, that probably helps that you came in here and you couldn't even lie to yourself that you would have a bias.
Yeah.
You've never done the dating app,
Yeah.
and you're a straight man. You actually called it out at the top that Grindr's had kind of multiple chapters, and in one of those chapters, the company was also run by a straight man. Was there any pushback when you came on, that just the fact that you're not gay?
I think it's probably fair to say that the LGBTQ community believes that it's suboptimal to have a straight guy as CEO of Grindr, and I think that's fair to say. It's not like, listen, if we had a business focused on women, no one would be shocked if the business were run by women, right, and led by women. And it's not just because of your ability to maybe deliver products that the management team or the employees can really identify with, which hopefully will build better products. Not always the case, right? Like, not everyone that works on Ferrari races cars. Not everyone that works for Yahoo is a sports fanatic on sports, or a finance fanatic or whatever. You don't have to do that, I don't think. But I think at a more conceptual level, there are only so many businesses that will champion the careers of LGBTQ, where those employees and that diverse user or that diverse employee base, they're getting sort of a good chance to advance their own careers. So I do think that while diversity is something that we've all tried to embrace, and I worked hard on it at Yahoo, I really take it seriously at Grindr, because Grindr's potential is to not only be a great service for the users, but also be a great launching pad for careers, right? We can do great things for people that are coming to us from the LGBTQ community, and Grindr represents a good opportunity for them to learn get great experience, and take the next step in their own career. So I would say probably I spend more of my time thinking about the diversity of the team, thinking about the diversity of the voices in the room, um, and just making sure that we are doing that. The benefit is because Grindr is so important in the community, in the LGBTQ community, and specifically, as you said, for gay men, but for actually many different people in the LGBTQ community overall, and for the not-for-profits that use the business as a way to talk to millions of users around the world. There's a lot of people in the ecosystem for whom the company is important. Because that is true, it's a gift for the business. It's a gift that people care. Um, we're able to find people who want to work at the business, and maybe I can pull them away from a really high-paying job at Google or somewhere else, because this is a chance for them to work on something where the product and the users really mean something to them. So that's another gift. Like, we have been incredibly successful, far more than I projected, on being able to hire really high talent people at prices we can afford. I'm not, in the end, we're a successful business, but we're not, we're not Google, we're not Apple, we're not, our problem every day as the CFO is not figuring out how to spend the money fast enough. It's coming in too quickly. We're more traditional than that.
Right. And I know at least a while back, Grindr used to also have some media properties that was part of the larger brand.
Yep.
Looking at Grindr today, has it kind of been cut down to just a dating app? I know obviously we're going to get into some of the ideas you have in the next 5-year trajectory, but as of right now, when you took it over, is it primarily just a dating app? And if so, what countries is it operating in?
Well, Grindr's global. Um, and we have users all over the world. In fact, only 50% of our users are US based. So we're actually very international. There's another piece to that, which is being a gay man is either very illegal or partially illegal in 88 countries around the world. So we call those bad neighborhoods. Not bad because our users are bad, but because the neighborhoods are unsafe for our users potentially. So yes, we are a global brand. There is risk um, for our users, because just simply the fact of being trans or being gay, um, being queer in the queer community at all is dangerous potentially. And we see it. We've seen it in just since I've been there. Pakistan has denied us to even be in the App Store because they think it's an offense to the Muslim religion. In Tunisia, we've had to work with some nonprofits on the ground there because of the risk. There was recently a report, and I actually think this has been going on for years in Egypt. I'm not sure if it's national police or just random local offices. We're trying to find out. They will use the app to bait men and then arrest them. And I've heard other stories of users who it's not often good to make homosexuality or make it illegal. It's not good from the UN's perspective. So many countries won't do that. Instead, they'll plant drugs on a user instead, because drug use, everyone's sort of down with that. But if they have this anti-gay or anti-homosexual policy at a law level, at a national level, at a policy level, or sometimes it's just at a local attitude level, those can be very unpopular nowadays internationally, in the international community. So there's risk that we have to be aware of. And it also means that we coordinate more with other partners in the dating services. Like, this is something that's happening not just to us. Like, Tinder has people in the LGBTQ community as well. And so this is a problem for them to think about as well. So OkCupid has that. Like, those are very serious issues. Those are things that we have to think about. I drifted off on the question, but
Well, let me follow up on that. So does that mean that users on Grindr can be somewhat like maybe pseudo-anonymous? Do you allow
oh
pseudo-anonymous
yeah,
accounts? Do you encourage
actually,
pseudo-anonymous accounts? How does that work?
yeah, I think if you read the PR on Grindr, you would think that the company has been a bad custodian of user data, and it's actually not the case. I don't know that a company I've ever seen be more privacy driven than Grindr. Grindr really knows nothing about its users. Our users use an email address to sign up, but we don't have access to that email address. We hash it. We can only help them reset their password, but we can't send them emails. We get them to do an SMS verification, but we use a third party. They don't hold on to that phone number, and we don't hold on to that phone number. That number is used just to verify that it's an account, so that the person hopefully is not a spammer or something like that. But then we don't hold on to that. When a user is chatting on Grindr, we only make sure the message gets delivered, and then we delete the message. We don't retain almost any information. We don't do targeted ads on the product because we don't want to collect the data on the user. The advertiser might know that it's Grindr, but that's it. They otherwise don't know really anything about it. We don't tell them how old the user is. We don't know how old the user is. We know that they're over 18, but we don't know much more about it. So we know very little about the users. It is a challenge from the product side when you know so little about the users, but it was built into the DNA of the company at its founding. I think it's a very different world, and around the world, and and all over the world. It's not that where we are today with sort of advancing on LGBTQ rights in the US, it's not necessarily the same for all countries. So privacy and anonymity is sort of built into the product at a very base level, at the engineering level. If you go read our privacy policy, which we have just relaunched, it's really clearly written, it's really extensive, and you'll see we literally know very little about the user. That's a challenge to us in a bunch of other areas. But yes, anonymity, privacy, data privacy, all those things are a key part of the Grindr community. It's, in some ways, I'm very proud of it, and in other ways, I'm sad about it, because the sad part is that it has to happen, that our users are terrified of, being exposed, whether it's to coworkers or friends and family. You can imagine if you're, 18 years old and you're living in any rural part of the world, or parts of South America, or wherever, parts of Asia, where just people knowing you're gay could cause a lot of problems for you and your family, could cause a lot of problems for you at school, or could cause a lot of problems for you at work. There was just a story of a sheriff, I forgot what community, she just ran for sheriff and she won, and she was out as a gay woman, and she was fired by her boss because she was gay, and she's a US sheriff in Ohio, in Hamilton County, Ohio. Sheriff McGuffey. She just won the other day, and literally fired for no other reason than it was discovered that she was a lesbian, and she was harassed at work and all these other things. So here we are in the middle of Ohio in the US. We've come really far. It's found out that she's gay, and she loses her job. She had been in law enforcement for like 30 years. So she runs for sheriff, and soundly 70% of the vote she wins to beat her old boss. So it's an inspirational story, but at the end, it's a sad story, and explains why privacy and anonymity is a key part of Grindr, more so than the straight equivalents. And that part, I would say, is a bummer. It's a bummer that we live in a world where a straight user can feel more safe about their identity than a user of a gay dating service.
Yeah, no, that's horrible. another horrible thing that happened this year, probably for the business, but obviously for the many people who've been affected by it, is the coronavirus. I'm pretty sure that Grindr was one of the first dating apps to kind of pioneer HIV testing as something that was listed on profiles. Can you tell me if that's still something that Grindr does, and if you guys are doing something now similar with coronavirus testing?
We've thought about in the coronavirus testing. I would say the issue with coronavirus is twofold. One is being tested yesterday doesn't give you that much. It's much easier to catch coronavirus than it is going to be to catch HIV for the most part. So the recency of your test, which on a service like Grindr, users generally, the users that are getting tested regularly, they're going to get tested once a quarter, maybe. And that will be sort of normal. There's also something called PrEP, which if you're on PrEP, it will most likely stop you from getting HIV virus, even from an infected user. So being on PrEP, being tested on Grindr, that's useful information for our community. It's obviously a risk for our users, and they want to stay safe, and we want to help them stay safe. Coronavirus is a little bit different. It's not that easy to say, unless you can test basically when you meet someone for the very first time, there is risk. But as you said, overall in online dating, starting in March, we saw, and when we saw it happen before in Asia, we saw usage change. Today, I think our users, most of that has been recovered. I don't think, remember, Grindr's really about, for the most part, one-to-one interactions. And people since March, when they were like, I can't see anyone, I'm going to lock the door, to today, I think I can interact with one person, in a way that's safe and not catch coronavirus. Spikes in coronavirus that we've seen, and we have an advisor who has a lot of insight into this, it's associated with like bars, and not being able to go to a bar is going to limit your ability to find someone to connect with, hook up. And online dating is often more just talking on, chatting and finding companionship online as well. The bars are hit, it's catastrophic for them. We're in some cases a substitute for being able to go to the local bar. And so our business is actually doing okay, all in all. I would say coronavirus is a headwind, but it's not a headwind like it is for local business. For us, it's single digit level. And we can kind of see even attitudes of users in different regions of the world and how they're feeling about their own safety based on, how many people are meeting face to face versus just keeping their relationship chatting. The other thing I think it does for online dating, and especially a service like Grindr, where our users are less likely, I've talked to many, many users that have found husbands on the service. They're less likely to get married, so they're more likely to be on the service for a longer period of time, or they're less likely to sort of end up in a solely exclusive relationship, because we tend to have a lot of users that are not yet at that part in their life where they're ready to settle down with someone. So that I think has also helped us. It is a social platform as well. It's not just a dating platform. And so yeah, overall, COVID's been terrible. I've never met most of my employees. We bought the business in June. I've been running a company. We have a small team in Taiwan now. I've never met those people face to face. I've never, our headquarters is in LA. I've been to the office, but during the diligence, I've not been back. It's been closed since the whole time we've been there. So yeah, our users are going through a little bit of this, but also on the business side where COVID's been a big challenge. It's hard to believe, to spend that much money and to do much of a commitment to a business and still not have met. We've hired 50 people in 100 days. I haven't met 40 of them.
Wow.
Other than, this, like what you and I are doing. So
yeah. Wow. I want to get into kind of the 5-year plan. I have a feeling that maybe you have some ambitious ideas about where Grindr can go. I don't see you as somebody who just wants to come in and maintain a product. I have a feeling you have some big ideas. But let me first throw this one out because you kind of just gave me the idea. Tell me if this is a good or a bad idea for Grindr. You look at where there's a lot of activity in a certain area, a certain neighborhood, a certain, district, if you will, and say, you know what, let's create a Grindr gay bar here where we can control the safety of kind of the experience and who comes in and out of the bar. And we can kind of create this in-person experience with liquor profit margins too. to go along with the Grindr on app experience so that it can be like a meeting spot and
Sure.
is
You're
that the
you're
idea?
uh, you're a restaurateur, so your brain
Right?
automatically goes to like, how could this become?
Exactly.
I think we would think of it differently just out of the reasons of scale. I think one thing you pointed out is very right. Grindr is one of the more location focused. Historically, the straight dating services are more about finding you a match, and then location is sort of part of the thing. With Grindr, location has always been the number one factor in finding someone. So, how close is the person to me? So, the service is inherently hyperlocal. It has already had a relationship with many local businesses as a result. We have a self-service ad system. If you're a local bar, you can advertise on Grindr, and we can target users on location. Um, that way. It's not actually done that much. We could do events. There's a competitor of ours that's a great service called Scruff. They actually partner, especially in New York, they partner with event promotion and things like that. So I definitely think there's an opportunity on local businesses, local tie-ins. You could almost see more of Pokemon Go type thing, where instead there's sort of key areas where, those are the places where you can find a lot of Grindr users. There's another use case, which I actually think is more interesting, that I started hearing about early on in our process of talking to users, which is I know a couple users, for example, that are married, and but they travel. They travel all the time. In fact, gay men are like 6 or 7 times more likely to go on a weekend trip than their straight peers. Like the travel is a big deal for gay men, and so our users are smart, and that they'll use the explore feature on Grindr. Let's say they're going to Barcelona. They'll actually wander around using Grindr, the neighborhoods, and kind of see the different profiles that show up. And they get a sense for like, wow, this feels like an amazing area. There's really attractive people here that, look like my vibe. And then they'll put their Airbnb in that spot of town
Wow.
using Grindr as a way to sort of figure out where to go. The other thing we know is that it's a great tool. It's, as I said before, it's not trivial in all cases to travel and be gay. You don't always know where you'll be most welcome, or where you'll be most safe, or where you'll find the best parties or the best places to go. And so our users, when they're traveling, they actually will just start talking to people in those cities. And then when they get there, they'll find people and say, hey, I'm here with my husband, I'm here with my partner, I'm here with my friend. Can you meet us at a bar? And we want to hear all about, Barcelona, what's to do, where should we be eating, drinking, hanging out, what are the fun parties? And that is much less likely to happen on the straight side. And so that you're seeing that social layer, you're seeing the community that I think is unique to Grindr, that I think makes it incredibly attractive as a business and as a service. So I think there's a lot of opportunity in the future just to keep building up the community features, because it already exists. The best features to build are the ones that the user base is already doing. I often think about Twitter, like adding someone and hashtagging something and all those things. The users were doing it right before Twitter could even turn them into features. The messaging feature was, I don't know, we always used to DM accidentally because it was like put a D in front of it and then you hope it'll become a direct message. And before they built the way it is, and retweeting was really awkward in the old days on Twitter because it wasn't really featured. Users were doing it and hashtagging was being done, but Twitter didn't know what to do with it once you did it. So I think Grindr has a ton of that potential. Our users are doing amazing things on the platform. They've come up with lots of different ways to use it. They use it for support networks. They use it for finding friends. They use it to find, partners. They use it to find parties to go to. They use it for travel. So there's all sorts of things that are happening on the platform right now that are interesting. And then the question is, can we help develop those behaviors with product enhancements without getting in the way of the core of the business? We never want to get in the way of the core of the business. It's what's made the business so successful. So that, I would say, if you were looking ahead 3 to 5 years, that's our opportunity and that's our challenge.
So kind of layering in different business lines based on the social engagement.
Yeah, and we also want to, I don't think that advertising, there are a lot of businesses where advertising is a natural fit. We're primarily a subscription business, but we have ads, too many ads, I would say. Um, and so we would love to be able to build the business models of the business around where the users are driving the most value and where our partners can drive the most value. So whether it's the local bar or a local event, or travel, or even products that, like financial services, all those things are more easy in some cases to build features around and to find partners on and to monetize. than it is to throw up an ad like you would if we were a media website, you know. And I don't think in many cases, because our users are on the product so much, targeting ads doesn't really work anyway. It's kind of okay for us not to target the ads. It doesn't make for a great ad experience. Our users don't want us to collect the data about them, so that's good. We don't need to target. But untargeted ads are not great. And then when untargeted ads are not great, you have a low CPM, and then the low CPM drives you to have more ads, and then it's like this terrible dive to the bottom. So
So
um,
I have
yeah, if
another
we look forward, yeah, go
I
ahead.
have another bad business model idea that I want to throw out there for you. So I
Sure.
believe this is true, or at least this is a stereotype, which is that when gay people move into a neighborhood, it increases property value. Um, you could think about trying to coordinate kind of a real estate strategy around where you're seeing hubs of gay activity as well. Again, I know this unrelated
I
business
would
model.
say, yeah, I would say we're happy for all of our users, no matter what they decide to do. We we already have this sort of great business model in being able to be there as a platform to help. I would say this on an individual dating basis, on an individual connection basis, Grindr is a pretty amazing business. If you define it as a social platform, which I think in many ways it could be defined as a social platform and not just simply a dating service. Um, if you broadly define it as a social platform, we are not doing enough to amplify the voices of our users. We're not doing enough to, like a great social platform amplifies. It
Mhm.
can amplify badly. Like I think a lot of people are frustrated with Facebook because it sort of amplifies some things really well, and in other cases, it's amplifying things in a bad way. But the promise of being a social platform is to empower your users, and the more users you have in the system, the more powerful their voices are. And so, a short-term example is during the election, we were able to partner to get out the vote. And we were able to target the get out the vote based on areas and neighborhoods we felt that were most important to get out the vote. And many of those are, it's easy to know that a user in San Francisco or a user in New York or a user in Berlin that's a Grindr user that getting out the vote, but you could almost use any platform for that. But if you have a set of candidates that you think will benefit from more people voting and not voting, which in general for our user base, increased turnout is positive overall, regardless of whether or not we know individually what any candidate stands for. Just getting increased participation in the election process is good for us. And that is important in parts of the world where it's not a stereotypically gay friendly community. And we can then talk to thousands and thousands of users in rural Georgia or parts of Georgia that maybe that they wouldn't get the same motivation or they wouldn't see the same community need to get out the vote. So I think that in that way, the platform has great promise to amplify the voices of our community and to amplify the voices of our users. The election is an interesting one. If it comes down to literally hundreds or just a few thousand votes, it could be that in the end, Grindr made the difference between who's the president of the United States, because we know that thousands of people registered to vote as a result of the campaigns we did um, to get the vote out.
Wow. Yeah, that would be huge. It'd be great if you guys could come out and announce that, take credit for one way or the other. Um, can you speak to the premium feature? I believe you're right now, it's priced at basically $20, $19.99. Can you speak to what enhanced functionality users get for that?
Sure. We actually have two premium layers. We have something called Grindr Extra and Grindr Unlimited. Grindr Unlimited was launched a year and a month ago, and Grindr Extra has been out for years, and it's gone through a number of sort of enhancements and variations. Historically, Grindr Extra on a straight dating service, normally there are things that they sort of stop you from doing. Let's say is how seeing who liked you and seeing how many likes you can do and how many super likes you can do and all those other things. The straight dating services typically are based on the fact that I'm going to first say I like you, and then I'm going to swipe right on you, and then if you swipe right on me, there'll be a virtual introduction and we can talk to each other. On Grindr, you can talk to any user you see. So the way we limit access actually is based on proximity. So our free users see about 100 profiles a day of the people that are closest to them. And I mean, I've opened up the app in downtown Palo Alto, and I can literally open up the app and it'll be like, there. Like, I can, users, it's really proximity based. And so you're going to see the 100 closest users to you. And especially during non-COVID times, that's a pretty dynamic screen. Every day you're going to see, different people. And when you open it up, and if you don't open up the app for even hours, you just disappear from the grid. It's not like the straight services where you can sign up and you'll be in the you'll be in the selection of people who can like you. On Grindr, you have to be active, and you have to be active, many times a day for you to show up on the grid in the cascade of profiles. So that's part of the reason we have such engaged users, but it's part of the magic of what makes Grindr amazing. And so that location and that restriction on 100 profiles, if you pay for extra, the number one reason people pay for extra is they want to see more profiles. And so they'll see 600 profiles instead of 100 a day. Now, 600 may sound like a lot, but if you live in a part of San Francisco and everything's proximity based and we're not showing you profiles based on who we think is the best match for you, then what that means is that you actually might see a semi-stagnant cascade of users. You might see the same guys every single day. And so people will upgrade. Now, the easy way to fix that is to get in your car and drive to another part of town. You'll see a totally 100 different profiles. Now, if you live in Iowa and the concentration of gay men near you or the concentration of queer people near you is, it's measured in miles and not feet, getting in your car is not going to help you change that around. So based on where you are, based on what you're interested in, extra generally buys you access to more profiles. There's some other things you get as well. And then if you go unlimited, it is as you would suggest, instead of being limited to 600 profiles, it's unlimited. But there's a bunch of other parts of the app, and we're always trying to figure out how can we enhance the premium features. We want our users to subscribe. I know the users that don't subscribe feel like, I wish I didn't have to pay money for this, but I know they don't like ads more. So I'd rather come up with the right set of products and features that they will pay for at a price point they'll feel comfortable with. Because a premium business model is the ultimate business model. It means we build something valuable, our users like it, they pay us for that. It's so direct. On the ad side, I'm paying this ad network, and I'm paying this person and the other advertiser. And by the time I'm collecting any money, I'm collecting pennies. And so I have to show thousands and thousands of ads to sort of keep the lights on for the service. So we prefer to do a premium business model. And Extra's been a great product, and it's incredibly popular with our users. Unlimited, when it was launched, also very popular. It's still overall pretty cheap to use Grindr. I know $20 a month is nothing to sneeze at, but relative to the value, I think it's a good value. And Unlimited, which costs more, you're still not paying more than, because we discount annual plans a lot. So you're not paying even like $100 to use Extra year round, and you're going to pay just a couple $100 to use Unlimited year round. And our users meet a lot of people on the platform. So I think it's a good deal. I think we can do better. Obviously, we always are thinking how can we make the products more compelling or the value higher? We want as many of our users to have a paid relationship with us as we can, not because we've stressed them out and feel like they have to pay, because they want to pay, because we're giving them something they really care about. So to me, that's one of the measures of success. Like, how many people can we convert to a paid user, even if it's only occasionally? It means we're doing a good job, I hope, in making a service that they value enough, to pay us a couple bucks.
Yeah. How long do you see yourself being in the big boy chair? How long do you think you're going to be CEO here?
I think it's like a career secret of mine is that I don't think very far in advance. People used to always ask me, they're like, how did you get to this part in your career and how did you get here? And I was like, I didn't think very far in advance. What I did is I'd get up and I'd say, am I fulfilled professionally? Do I feel happy in my own job? I'd get up and say, is the business getting enough from me? Am I able to provide the business something that's good enough that it's a good use of its time and money? Because it's an opportunity cost. If I'm the CEO, that means somebody else can't be the CEO. So that trade-off is it good for the business? And am I getting enough out of it? And am I happy every morning? And as long as the answer is yes, and it can be no, like on a day, I might have a day that's like a terrible day or a stressful day. But if after 30 days, the answer is no in either one of those categories, then it's time for me to start thinking about go do something else. So it's less about me. If you told me 3 years from now or 4 years from now, I was still CEO of Grindr, that would mean that pretty great things are happening, I would think. That I've done a good job, the business is doing well, and that I'm happy in the role. But you're right to say that I have lots of opportunities. There are things I can work on, and I can work on any number of projects. But I will tell you, Grindr has been incredibly professionally fulfilling And I also feel very much like if I can achieve some success for the business, I'm doing something of value for the world and for the LGBTQ community. I'm honored that, that we can have a relationship with GLAAD, and that we can have a relationship with actually tens and tens of charities around the world that need to work with Grindr in order to advance their mission. And we're trying to do better on that. We're working on the next phases for Grindr for Equality, our sort of for good side of the business. So yeah, but by the way, if I met someone tomorrow who was going to be the best CEO for Grindr ever, I would instantly. I'm also an investor. I'm like
Of
one of
course.
the owners
Yeah.
of the business. So I would step down in a second. If I could find the right person who I thought would do a better job than I could, I think I am a good match for what the business needs today. And so I'm enjoying myself a lot. I've learned so much. I've been humbled so often about sort of bringing my own set of experiences and just being wrong. And I've enjoyed getting to know the employees that are there, and also hiring a whole new slew of incredibly talented people. The greatest joy I learned was to stop worrying about how individually I felt I was contributing, and instead to gauge my own success on how I was helping other people sort of have their best moments in their career and advance themselves and learn as much and make the maximum contribution. So to the extent that Grindr's been a great opportunity for me to do that, that part has been incredibly fulfilling. I have someone I've respected forever that starts on it's basically every Monday and Tuesday. I have at least 2 or 3 people starting that I'm like, oh, I can't wait to work with this person. They're amazing. I know they're going to be able to bring so much to the business. And then I sleep a little bit better. The first 60 days of Grindr, I was not sleeping much. I was not up to the task because I was learning on the job and probably never learning fast enough. And the business was the predictable stress associated with the transaction and the handover that was happening, and stress from management team members that weren't going to be a good fit for us going forward, all that stuff, and a lot of that's behind us now. And so if it weren't for the election, I'd be sleeping really well. But in general, I'm pretty happy at Grindr. I don't really think about, what's next, other than I'm always thinking about what talent could we bring to the business to push it to the next level, or what talent internally can we develop to help bring the business to the next level. And someday and sometime, whether it's just by chance or because of we aggressively seek it out, we'll find an even better person to be CEO of the company someday. And fingers crossed it's from the LGBTQ community, because we're one of the biggest LGBTQ focused businesses in the world. And yeah, it's a bummer sometimes to have a straight guy leading the business when opportunistic, as I said before, supporting people and growing their careers, maybe there would be someone better than I am. But across the board, I feel good about the diversity of the team we're building, the number of voices that are in the room, and the number of careers we can help champion. So that's a long answer again. The short answer is, I don't know. I don't think about it. As long as I wake up kind of happy for enough days in a row. I had not been in an operating role for over a year, and I didn't know how to shape I was, just like meeting shape, like how many meetings. And Zoom is a whole different level of conditioning you have to be able to do 6 hours a day or 7 hours a day of Zoom meetings versus face to face. Because I'm an introvert, but I still derive energy from my interactions with people in a different way. And Zoom is sort of uniquely challenging. It's rewarding for an introvert in some ways, but it's at the end of the day, my brain is like molasses. My kids look at me and say, can we do all this? And I'm like, I can literally do nothing.
Yeah, well, I think history is going to look back on this situation. And I said it at the top of the call before we started the podcast. I really do believe that Grindr is going to be a case study someday for business school, because between what happened with acquiring the company from a Chinese company, and just the issue of having a straight CEO take over a gay-dominated community, I think it's very interesting. I'm excited to see where you're going to take it in 5 years. From now. And
well, by the way, let's hope the story is not about the gay guy that led Grindr, but instead the team that helped push Grindr ahead and turn it into a great business. And hopefully my being straight or gay will not get in the way, I think, is the way I think about it. Hopefully my being straight will not get in the way of the success of the company. It is still a challenge, though, and certainly we're missing an opportunity, to the extent we can, to give an opportunity to someone. But I see that for all the roles in the company. Like, where can we give someone? It's not a bad way, if you're a manager, to think about any business. How is this job an opportunity to make someone's next big step in their career, or help them, fully realize their potential. And when you start to think about business and careers that way, it's amazing. And if you individually think about your own career that way, in terms of less around I need job security, but instead I need progression. I always need to be getting into a position where, and progression can sometimes feel stagnant. That's the thing, which it doesn't mean being impatient. It means finding that combination of patience and impatience and really pushing yourself. And right now, what I'm lucky is that Grindr is really pushing me. I'm becoming a better manager. I'm becoming more effective as a product manager. I'm learning a ton from the employees and from the users, and it's a challenge. But the company represents that same opportunity across the board for every role, whether it's customer care to one of the executive team members. So that's the way we approach the company. And I think it was a big switch for me somewhere like in the last decade to see filling jobs not just simply as a mechanical thing of hiring a person with tasks that somebody has this set of skills for this role, but instead saying like, yes, we found someone with a good match of skills, and how can this be a spring to sort of push them to the next level in their career. And when you align with yourself, it's like finding that product market fit on the product side, and how your business will accelerate incredibly quickly. And on the talent side, if you can find that product market fit and where they're going in their career and what they're capable of bringing to the business, but what you're capable of giving back to them to help them develop their career, that's like the dream. That's the day I wake up the happiest. Those are those either the coaching meetings or the hiring decisions we make where it's just like, that feels amazing. I've had so many of those in the last 120 days at Grindr that I think has brought me the most happiness. I can't wait to spend more time with the users and get to know them better so I can, refine the empathy muscle. But right now it's really just been about, developing a great team and putting the right team in place to get us so we can achieve all those things I think the business is capable of.
Yeah. Well, you've been very generous with your time today, Jeff. I have two final questions that I ask every guest. Just forewarning, they're maybe a little bit silly, but we like to ask them so that we leave on a lighter note. But before I ask those last two questions, can you give listeners anywhere where they should go to follow you and your work, or any kind of links to Grindr itself?
Yeah. Well, Grindr.com, and then you'll find links to download the app, where you have to have Android or iOS to use the service today. And if you're interested, download the app for sure. Check it out. You can join as a free user, and I'd love to we always want to get your feedback, however you can do that. For me personally, I'm basically Bonforte at, like, whether it's LinkedIn or Twitter, almost any service, you can generally find me through my last name, Bonforte at. Yeah, I mean, I don't tweet much anymore. I don't do much on any of those. It's just been, I'm sort of spend more of my time reading what everyone else is talking about. Although I've had a couple of things to say in the last week, since it's been a traumatic election week so far. But
yeah, just for listeners, we're recording this on November 5th, so we still don't know who's president.
Yeah, we don't even know who's president. We're starting to get a sense, hopefully, of who we think it'll be, but we still don't know, and it's frustrating. I just learned that in Nevada, they don't budget for overtime for their poll workers, which is why the vote count in Nevada is taking so long. And they just had recently communicated in Nevada, we still have a bunch of ballots to go through. We hope to get through them this weekend, but it's like 100,000 ballots to get through. And they've been working for whatever, 3 or 4 days. And they hope to get through it by the end of this weekend, if not early next week. And I'm like, Todd, we need a GoFundMe page so we can help Nevada just pay some overtime to get this. The whole country's waiting on 1 or 2 states. And I feel like actually Pennsylvania and Georgia are making good progress, but Arizona and Utah and Nevada are going so slow.
Yeah, no, hopefully by the time this airs, we know.
Yeah.
So my last two questions for you, Jeff, let's start with this one. Bitcoin, are you a believer or not so much?
Yeah, I'm long Bitcoin. I've owned a fair amount of Bitcoin for years now. So yeah, I'm generally long on it. I think blockchain overall serves a lot of purposes. I mean, we have employees in Taiwan. Just paying an employee in Taiwan is incredibly difficult. If you, under the current banking systems, it's difficult for them. So I think international banking will make blockchain technology very attractive at all levels of the finance space. Yeah, I like Bitcoin generally. I'm positive on Bitcoin, but if you didn't care about Bitcoin at all and you just were interested in blockchain, I'm super pro blockchain long term as a technology. I think it's foundational. It will change the world in ways we can't conceive yet. And like all new stuff that has great potential, the early stuff can be a little bit messy and failure rates can be high. But look back to HTML, look back to TCP and all these fundamental technologies. And I think of blockchain as one of those. And if you take TCP from its early infancy days to where it is now and how it's, the foundation of the modern web, it's amazing. It's amazing. So yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree. And blockchain could probably help solve these waiting for the votes issues that we're experiencing right
Could
now.
do that. I also think it could help us on the finding that right balance between anonymity and safety that we can do when identity is verified, and we can sort of, I think there's blockchain can solve a lot of problems on online identities overall. It's a pretty clumsy model today.
Yeah. Okay. And for our last question, are we living in a simulation?
I just had this discussion the other day just to tell
Right.
everyone it doesn't matter. We're just literally the 7-second simulation of the Xbox 1900 version, some kid's Game Boy system or Xbox system. I guess it doesn't matter, right? Our reality is our reality, so it doesn't matter. I think whether or not you thought we were one of many universes, whether or not you thought we were a speck of dust on the timeline, and that these our planet's 4.5 billion years, we can't see back more than a few million years in terms of the history. So who knows what version of life we are on Earth or whatever it is. So to a certain extent, if you abstract out, yeah, we are all a version of simulation because time is so massive and humans are so incapable of understanding time and our place in it and our position in the massiveness of the universe. It, for all intents and purposes, it behaves like simulation. I think then the challenge for humanity is to be good to each other, even in the event of the lack of pressure for being judged or all these other things. And that'll be a big challenge for us as a species going forward, is to just find the ability to, it's like a local maximum versus sort of an overall maximum. It's hard to know what the optimal thing for life is on a universal maximum, but a local maximum is I should be kinder to you today than I was yesterday, and I should be better to my kids and better to their kids and better. Sort of my role in the world is to hit a local maximum, and a local maximum generally is to be kinder, be more thoughtful, be more empathetic, be more charitable, all those things. So I think that's a challenge for all of us. So I'm going to sidestep it whether or not we're in a simulation. It doesn't really matter. Our behavior wouldn't change one way or the other, which is we should always seeking local optimum, not defined in just for me, but local meaning the world around me. That means, making good decisions. And so I can make good climate change decisions because hitting a local optimum can equal, collectively making sort of global or universal optimums.
Yeah, I tend to agree. Whether we're living in a simulation or not, we're in it, and we might as well be good to each other. So
yeah.
With that, Jeff, thank you so much for taking the time and being on this episode of the Credder Podcast. We wish you and Grindr the best of luck.
Okay, great. Good to see you, Chase.
Thanks.